As we begin, we would like to acknowledge that this service is being held by a community that gathers on the stolen traditional lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to those Indigenous people who lost their lives in the colonization of this land and recognize that these Indigenous tribes are still here today, facing violations of sovereignty, territory, and water. We also give thanks for for the earth we walk upon, the waters, the life-giving plants, and all the earth's creatures, as well as the winds, sun, moon, and stars. We recognize that this is a first step in moving towards right relationship with Native peoples and healing of the earth. Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent. And welcome to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, FPC, to our members and friends, a welcoming and spiritual community. My name is Brendon Chetwynd, and I serve as a member of your Board of Trustees. If this is your first time with us, we welcome you. Our minister and staff are listed on the front of the order of service. Please feel free to ask any of these people for more information about our church and its programs after the service, or by email, or through the chat if you're online. We also invite you to check out our webpage for news and information, and you can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts. We ask that people remain masked in our sanctuary, except in the balcony and in church offices and RE spaces, but the rest of our building is mask optional. Please check with the people you're with talking to about their comfort levels, and please make sure the air filters are on when you congregate in any room. If you would like a large print order of service or hymnal or an assisted listening device, please ask our ushers. Our assisted listening devices are actually small radios that work throughout the building if you would like to listen to the service from any space for any reason. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall, which is down one level at the other end of the building, or in a breakout room if you're joining us online. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements on our order of service, as well as information about how to sign up for our email list and newsletter. And I do have one special announcement. We're very happy to have the Reverend Peter Samochdi, and I apologize for the pronunciation, visiting us from the Czech Republic this week. Reverend Peter is doing research on our former minister, Reverend Don Kafka. If you have stories about Reverend Don Kafka to share, please see Cindy for how to sign up to meet with Reverend Peter. And all are invited to come to our potluck reception Tuesday. The time has been pushed back a little to 6:30 p.m. There is no sign up. It is truly a potluck. And now let us come together for a time of community, singing, and worship.
Before we begin, I just wanted to say first, good morning, hello. I'm Brad, I'm the music director here, and I wanted to note a special thing that we have happening this morning, which is our first ever open choir. Look at them all. So if you hadn't seen the FPC announce, every first Sunday going forward, we're gonna invite anybody that wants to come and learn the music that morning to come and join us and try it out. So our next one will be the first Sunday of December. We welcome you to come that morning at 9 a.m., learn the music with us and give it a try. I think if you're brand new this morning, well, brand new, many of you are not totally new, but could you stand so we could see the totally new people? There's a handful of you, 8 of you, new to the choir, yes. And now you all have to stand because you have to sing.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round, then peace abides. We shall be known by the ones who sow and bring the seeds of change that lie from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round their peace arms. We shall be known by the ones who sow and breathe the seeds of change that lie from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we fly. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend Dr. David Brendon. It's the only constant in all that change is. It's the passing of things. It is the passing of all things change is. It is the becoming of all. It is a parade, this change is. It is a dance, this change is. It is the river and the stepping that's never twice. It is the tragedy of all that was, this change is. It is the fear of all that is, this change is. It is the hope of what may be yet, this constant, this change, this ice to water, this day to eternity. Come to the river, step, step, step. And our chalice lighting words are in honor of First Steps by the Reverend Scott Taylor. Brad, would you light our chalice this morning? Thank you. We light this chalice in honor of first steps, for beginning even when the path is unclear, for the courage it takes to trust that the way will reveal itself, that the light will come to clarify our vision, that friends will be by our side. May the words, song, stillness, and common breath of this hour remind us that every step of the way is never one we take alone. And our opening hymn is an insert in your order of service. This is from the Justice Choir Songbook that we've been using a lot ever since Brad came and introduced it to me, and it's got some wonderful songs in it. This is Be the Change. Please stand in body or spirit.
you want to see in the world. Be the shepherd.
So are you ready for a little change this morning? I'm going to change the order of service today, and only for today. So instead of the affirmation printed in your orders of service after we say our covenant, I'd like you to sing to the same tune the words of number 375. If you could pull out your gray hymnals. And then please join me. I'll let you flip for a moment. 375. And please join me in the words of our covenant, which are the same as printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. As saffron trees now capture fire, and memories our hopes inspire, we'll praise imagination's praise, the human heart's best resting place. Please be seated. How did that feel? Different, a little strange. Some of you liked it. A couple, some of you didn't. A lot. Change is hard. Yeah. Thanks for experimenting with me. Now I'd like to invite up our religious education director, my tongue is all tied, Marissa Evans.
Good morning. So this week, or this month in religious education class, our theme is change. And today we will be reading a story about change. And sometimes change can be exciting. Sometimes it can be scary or sad because we have to let go of things that we're used to or that we love. But a lot of times it gives us the opportunity to try something new. So this book is about a little tree. Once there was a little tree filled with little leaves, who was surrounded by other little trees who had little leaves of their own. In the heart of long summer days, little tree's leaves kept him cool. The squirrels would climb up on his branches to play. The mourning dove landed in him and sang her fluty song. The little tree was sure to grow up big and strong. Autumn arrived and cool winds filled the air. The wind tickled the little tree as it passed through his branches and ruffled his leaves. The air grew cold and the leaves on all of the trees changed color, becoming yellow, red, and orange. Then, one by one, the trees began to drop their leaves. But not little tree, he just hugged his leaves on tight. "Hello, little tree," said a squirrel. "You are supposed to drop your leaves now." But little tree was unsure. What would he do without his leaves? Winter came. "What are you doing with your leaves still on you?" asked the doe. Little tree just hugged his leaves on tight. Springtime arrived, and the little forest burst into life again. The other trees grew bright new leaves. The squirrels played in their branches. Little tree could hear the mourning dove singing her fluty song. But the seasons continued to come and go. "Little tree," quacked a duckling, "your leaves are brown. Are you feeling sick?" A fox said, "Little tree, it's autumn. It's time for you to drop your leaves. You can do it. Ready? 1, 2. But little tree just hugged his leaves tight. Maybe you can think of a time when you felt scared to make a change. I wonder what's going to happen for Little Tree. All around, the forest grew and grew. One summer, Little Tree could no longer feel the sunlight. The squirrels played high above on the broad, tall trees. And the mourning dove sang so far away that he could hardly hear her fluty song. Autumn came and went again. Leaves began to blanket the ground. Little Tree looked up at the other trees, at their branches reaching high into the sky. He remembered when all those trees had been his same size. And then he let go. As his last leaf floated to the ground, for the first time, Little Tree felt the harsh cold of winter. But in time, something happened. He grew leaves. Once there was a little tree, and he became a big tree like the others. And I'd like to invite Rosa and Dante to come on up and light our lantern. And as they do that, you can think about things in your own life that might be changing right now, and whether it's easy to let go and allow that change to come, or whether there's something that's hard to let go of. And you can think about what might happen when you do.
Thank you, Hector. Our words for prayer or meditation come from Teresa I. Soto's book, Spilling the Light. I wish the knowledge were easier to come by, that individualism is just a scam, that you are always the butterfly wings, you are always the storm. Edward Lorenz, a weather scientist from MIT, is sometimes misquoted on this as the premise that the flap of a butterfly wing can cause a hurricane in a different part of the world. Shorthand that isn't all that close to a representation of the math-turned-weather scientist's work. He proposed that should we make even a tiny alteration to nature, we will never know what would have happened if we had not disturbed it, since subsequent changes are too complex and too entangled to restore a previous state. Which is to say that you have an immeasurable effect on the system. It will change, and you will shape its DNA. You must not believe the lying lie that you do not matter, that whatever change you can organize is so insufficient as to not be worth your time, your energy, your life force. You must be willing to dream a dream that carries forward your community. This is how we rise. This day is polluted with a mistrust of truth, fertile and warm medium for unchecked cruelty and power. You must choose to scream the truth until every leaf and stone bears unrepentant witness to what happens when you try to cage and smash, to pin and frame a butterfly. And there are thousands and thousands of fabulous, flamboyant friends. Blessed be, and amen. Our next hymn is number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Please rise in body or in spirit. I love this. It's not so often that the flower arrangement is so tall I can fidget with it. It's really cool. In their book, The Fourth Turning, What Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous with Destiny, by William Strauss and Neil Howe, the authors write in 1997 about how we are in 1997, what they call a third turning, which is a period of unraveling the gains made in the more heroic age of the second turning, which for us was the 1960s and 70s, civil rights movements and all the achievements we had then. The third turning would end around 2005, they predicted, and we would enter a fourth turning, or a crisis age. Then around 2020, they said it would hit its peak in a major crisis and resolve in around 2026. So here are some of the scenarios they write, again in 1997, as possible scenarios for a crisis age that might emerge in 2005 and peak in 2020-ish. And I'm listing here 3 of the 5 scenarios that they detail. First scenario. An impasse over the federal budget reaches a stalemate. The president and Congress both refuse to back down, triggering a near total government shutdown. The president declares emergency powers. Congress rescinds his authority. Dollars and bond prices plummet. The president threatens to stop Social Security checks. Congress refuses to raise the debt ceiling. Default looms. Wall Street panics. Second possible scenario. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced the spread of a new communicable virus. The disease reaches densely populated areas, killing some. Congress enacts mandatory quarantine measures. The president orders the National Guard to throw prophylactic cordons around unsafe neighborhoods. Mayors resist. Urban gangs battle suburban militias. Calls mount for the president to declare martial law. Third scenario. Growing anarchy throughout the former Soviet Republic prompts Russia to conduct training exercises around its borders. Lithuania erupts in a civil war. Negotiations break down. US diplomats are captured and publicly taunted. The president airlifts troops to rescue them and orders ships into the Black Sea. Iran declares its alliance with Russia. Gold and oil prices soar. Congress debates restoring the draft. They then continue. It's highly unlikely that any of these scenarios will actually happen. What is likely, however, is that the catalyst will unfold according to a basic crisis dynamic that underlies all these scenarios. An initial spark will trigger a chain reaction of unyielding responses and further emergencies. The core elements of these scenarios, debt, civic decay, global disorder, will matter more than the details, which the catalyst will juxtapose and connect in some unknowable way. If foreign societies are also entering a fourth turning, this could accelerate the chain reaction. At home and abroad, these events will reflect the tearing of the civic fabric at points of extreme vulnerability. Problem areas where, during the unraveling, America will have neglected, denied, or delayed needed action. Anger at mistakes we made will translate into calls for action, regardless of the heightened public risk. It is unlikely that the catalyst will worsen into a full-fledged catastrophe, since the nation will probably find a way to avert the initial danger and stabilize the situation for a while. The local rebellions will probably be quelled, terrorists foiled, fiscal crisis averted, disease halted, or war fever cooled. Yet even if dire consequences are temporarily averted, America will have entered the fourth turning. Thus ends the reading. And are we not fortunate that none of these scenarios exactly came to pass? Here at FPC, we share our plate every month with different organizations that we as a community have voted on to support. And so for the good work of this church, we will now collect the morning offering after we have Mary Evans come forward and tell us from the Supporting Asylum Seekers Task Force more about this month's plate sharing organization.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning. I'm Mary Evans. I'm a member of your Supporting Asylum Seekers Task Force. Really want to thank this congregation for your support that you've given us through fundraisers, through supporting our families. Currently, we support a family from Honduras, a family of 4. We've done fundraising. You all have hired them for jobs around your homes, and they are in process with an attorney seeking towards asylum. They've been approved for an asylum case, and we fundraised to help them with that. This year, we also expanded, and through the vision of Roy Miller, have joined a 7-church partnership that's working with Afghan evacuees. And it's been very fascinating to work with other area churches and to find that we really had a lot to teach them about the process. Afghan evacuees actually have a road to travel, unlike those who are immigrating from south of the border and other places around. So we have a family in Maynard that we're supporting, assisting with, and a family in Lowell. Both of them have about 6 people in their family, and we've done things like taking them to learn to drive a car, helping them with their resumes, taking them to appointments, and learning more about the Afghan culture. We meet once a month on Monday nights, and Susie O'Brien and Steve Evans are the chairs of the task force, and you can reach out to them if you'd like to join us. We'd love to have you. Thank you very much.
I begin with a meditation. In her book, Pause, Rest, Be, Stillness Practices for Courage in Times of Change, African-American author Octavia F. Rahim writes this: I am looking at a river flow, a steady, slow stream. There are heavy rocks anchored beneath the pulsing river. I lean forward to sense the depth and touch the movement of this moment. Up close, I see the rocks worn, clearly affected, transformed even, by the ambling, unhurried dance of water passing eternity after eternity over them. I look to the river to teach me a way to live, exist, be. River speaks to me in whispers and slow rhymes. River says, watch me, I am unhurried, and I have been for millions of years. I know my rhythm and the very drumbeat of life. I am soft and fluid, yet I change everything I touch. I am changed by everything that touches me. I resist nothing. Most years, I am gentle. Here I am, down by the riverside. So much has ended. We all have been changed. I offer my endings to the river. I offer our collective endings to the river. I stand here being washed over, yet fully participating in the shift. As I am cleansed, I am also worn. For tomorrow, I carry both the wisdom of the river and the soul of the rock in my heart. Thus ends the meditation. For several years, I've been talking about how we are in a liminal time, a time of change, on the threshold between what was and what will be. In my installation in the spring of 2019, we used a piece of music set to Jane Hirshfield's poem, The Door, which speaks of being hinged between worlds that precedes change and allows it. In the fall of 2019, I turned to that book that I just read from, The Great Turning by Strauss and Howe, I think, and preached on the idea that we're in the turning of an age, in a time of crisis that will come before the new era begins. And then there was pandemic. And I turned to Octavia Butler's God is Change and other poems and pieces which speak to liminality. This may feel like it's all I've ever preached on. I start to wonder if that's true, but truly it is not. If you asked me before 4 to 6 years ago what my one burning core sermon in me was about, it was about hope, the bending of the arc towards justice and love, the idea that love abides no matter what, that even in the darkest times we have hope. It was about hope. Yes, there was sorrow and struggle in that message too, but it was not about liminality, about change, about being on the cusp of something in quite the same way. So this reminds me, did you see Saturday Night Live last night? I don't watch it on Saturday nights, I get to sleep earlier, but I sometimes watch the videos on Sunday morning. And so this morning I watched Weekend Update, and Colin Jost said this: President Biden, seen here begging for one more year before the midterms, warned about Republican candidates who say they will refuse to accept election results, and warning that they could set the nation on a path to chaos. So wait, this is just a path to chaos? I thought we had been living chaos for at least 6 years. So yeah, 6 years. What changed my worldview? Truthfully, it was the election of our 45th president of the United States 6 years ago. Although it took a couple years, I think, for the truth of the unraveling of the age and the crisis looming to really take hold in me. It was somewhere around the appointing of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court when we saw the beginning of the path that seemed impossible yet inevitable, certain yet unimaginable, that would lead to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Something in me did think it was impossible. Roe v. Wade had been declared in 1973. Do you know how old I was in 1973? I was 3. I don't remember it. I don't remember really anything before Roe v. Wade. I don't remember abortion not being legal throughout the land. All throughout my life, though, I've watched it being slowly chipped away at, but certain that this was it, that this was all that would happen. Ships would happen, but we would still have this right as women to choose about our bodies. And then, of course, came the pandemic, and the whole society changed and created a divide between what some call the before times now, and then this time that we're in, and whatever will come next. I thought I was going to talk to you today about what it means for church life and the future of Unitarian Universalism, but I'll have to do that next week some. It's clear to me right now that we're in a time period of crisis. We're in crisis for the climate. We're in crisis for democracy. Where gains made 50 years ago, like abortion rights, have been overturned, and we're on the verge of losing same-sex marriage and other civil rights. This is a tipping point. And which way we'll tip to and what to, we do not know. In the fourth turning, the authors talk about how we're in this period that they call the fourth turning, this time of crisis at the end of an era, and there are different possibilities about what may emerge. They write, if all goes well, there could be a renaissance of civic trust and more. Today's third turning problems, that Rubik's Cube of crime, race, money, family, culture, and ethics, will snap into a fourth turning solution. Thus, might the next fourth turning end in apocalypse or glory. The nation could be ruined, its democracy destroyed, and millions of people scattered. Or America could enter a new golden age, triumphantly applying shared values to improve the human condition. This is that moment that they wrote about in 1997. This is the cusp we're at. A choice is before us. Do we choose democracy or do we choose fascism? The rising forces of fascism, starting with election results denial and undermining the authority of elections as a source at all of choosing our leaders, is clearly upon us. The climate change denialists are still going strong. The overturning of abortion rights at the state-by-state level has begun and will continue to a federal level if left unchecked. And more rights will follow. So much hangs in the balance at this very moment, this very week. And the truth is the die is already cast. It's already rolling, if not quite cast. Many, maybe most of us here have already voted. How many of you have already voted? Oh, Lord, that's almost all of you. I was guessing 60, 70%. That's more like 80, 90%. And you still have 2 days left. We're not the state, however, where the shifts in the balance of power will take place. So all we can do in some sense is watch, right? And wait for the returns in Georgia and other states. I'm watching Georgia most because that's where my parents are from. And I lived there when I was a wee toddler, and then again in my 20s where I met my New Englander husband there. So much of the world feels like forces beyond our control, much like Georgia elections are beyond our control up here in New England. How many times have we sat and watched as Florida or Ohio are slowly counted, the swing states? It's easy to feel hopeless. So what are our moves in this global chess game? What can we do? Now, these may be platitudes, but these are the things I recount to myself when I start to feel hopeless, the things that remind me that I do make a difference. So I'm going to recount them for you. First, there's that butterfly effect. And then I quote Margaret Mead. You know it? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I quote Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. And I quote Cornel West, many different Cornel West quotes. I could quote Cornel West quotes all day, but this one is, to live is to wrestle with despair, yet never allow despair to have the last word. And lastly, and most importantly, I remember Anne Frank, who said, I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, and that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. Anne Frank lived too in a time of rising and triumphant fascism, and yet it ended, and the world came right once again. We are at a cusp, but we do have the power to turn the world around, to build a new way. And so we do vote, we lobby, we make calls, we give rides to go get out the vote. Unitarian Universalists around this country, through UU the Vote, are flocking to areas at risk where they will be poll watchers, poll guardians. I invited local colleagues to lunch with Reverend Peter this week, and one local colleague told me she's headed off to another state to do just that. Because we are not going to sit idly by and watch democracy fail. Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, a Zen priest and Black woman, said in On Being, quote, there is something dying in our society, in our culture, and there's something dying in us individually. And what is dying, I think, is the willingness to be in denial. And that is extraordinary. It's always been happening. And when it happens in enough of us, in a short enough period of time at the same time, then you have a tipping point and the culture begins to shift. If we were talking about personal change, as in that story that was shared by Marissa this morning, we might learn that sometimes we have to let go of all of our leaves and risk death in order to grow. And sometimes we have to go through the fire and come out the other side like the phoenix. The same is true of societal change. We want change, but sometimes it takes a revolution. It takes a great upheaval in order to bring it about. And another thing it takes is imagination. Detroit author and activist Adrienne Maree Brown has said, I believe all organizing is science fiction, that we are shaping the future we long for and have not yet experienced. She also looks to the books of Octavia Butler as inspirational. In her book, Emergent Strategy, she says, we have to imagine beyond those fears. We have to ideate, imagine, and conceive together. We must imagine new worlds that transition ideologies and norms so that no one sees Black people as murderers or brown people as terrorists and aliens, but all of us as potential cultural and economic innovators. This is a time travel exercise for the heart. This is collaborative ideation. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us? The more people that collaborate on that ideation, the more that people will be served by the resulting worlds. Science fiction is simply a way to practice the future together. I suspect, she says, that is what many of you are up to, practicing futures together, practicing justice together, living into new stories. It is our right and responsibility to create a new world. I just want to pause here before I conclude and say that I realize that a large percentage of the authors and thinkers that I'm relying on today and that I turn to regularly on this subject are people of color, particularly Black authors. And there's a reason for that. Because people of color in our society have not been able to have the blinders on and to say, make America great again, where the imagined great period was in the 1950s, before upheaval and unraveling, but also before civil rights, when voting wasn't assured. And Black people in our society today are the ones who have known all along, while some of the people like myself, who don't so identify, we're still waking up to the ideas that racism isn't over and that life is unsafe for them. And so when life hasn't been safe all along, this unraveling that many of us have been experiencing, many of us with more privilege like myself have been seeing, it's not as big of a shift. So I'm just recognizing right now that it's people of color who are leading the way in this discussion and sharing with us, now that we're all here in this time of chaos together, what they've learned all along about survival, and more than just about survival, about change and imagination for change. So, for example, it's not just science fiction broadly that Adrienne Maree Brown is talking about. It's more specifically Afrofuturism that she's immersed in and is using to teach us how to imagine. It may seem simplistic that to say that the way out of chaos is perversely to just keep going and to have imagination. But the truth is, like Margaret Mead said, that's the only thing that's ever changed the world. Organizing, persistence, imagination, fortitude, small groups of committed people. These are the fragments we shore up against the ruins, to misquote T.S. Eliot. This is the beauty of living in this time of change. The future is open to us. Everything is possible. The new age is dawning, and we are not alone in fighting for the glory of that vision instead of the encroaching apocalypse. Everything is still possible. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 1017, Building a New Way. Please rise in body or in spirit. closing words are by Bill Sinkford, former UUA president. Spirit of life and love, dear God of all the nations, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Help us hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. This is our dream. Amen. Our closing song today is Keep On Moving Forward. If you don't know the words, you'll catch on pretty quickly, and Brad will call out the verses to us.
Gotta keep on moving forward. Gotta keep on moving forward. Gotta keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Learn to love our neighbor. Learn to love our neighbor. Learn to love our neighbor. Never turning back. Never turning back. Supposed to change the system. We're supposed to change the system. We're supposed to change the system. Never turning back. Never turning back. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back.